We are getting a progress report on an Oregon law meant to prevent gun violence. The Secretary of State's office released the audit this morning on the state's red flag law. The Extreme Risk Protection Order law, also known as ERPO, has been in effect since 2018. It allows family, household members, or law enforcement to request civil court orders to prevent people considered at risk from having access to guns. The audit shows in the first 4.5 years that it was active, 564 petitions were filed. 76% of those petitions requested by law enforcement were approved by a judge. Household or family members made up about a third of the requests. They were granted an order about 60% of the time. The audit says about 7% of the requested orders were filed by ineligible people. Auditors say that indicates that more public awareness and education about the law may be needed.